was so cold and the weather was so bad that there was like almost no photographic opportunities. And so in the moment, you're like, "Oh my goodness, I just wasted all this money and why did I make this choice and whatnot." But then again, it was like, "Man, I'm up here, close to the Arctic Circle, like like it's just amazing to be out here and be in these places." So I always, whenever possible, try to be as thankful as I can to be in these places, to have the experiences that we talked about, because the experience is the focus. It's not the photography. Photography is important, but it's second fiddle to being able to have these unique moments.
Yeah, and you need the bad times or the not great times to make the good times better.
I have on my arm here, this is the Buddhist prayer. So this is Om Mani Padme Hum, and the direct translation is "Hail the jewel of the lotus." And the idea is that through life, one finds wisdom and peace, and it's just a good constant reminder that it's the journey that's important. It's the ups and the downs where you learn and you can find happiness.
Welcome back, guys, to Vallerret Creative Outsiders, where we chase the radical stars from behind the lens. I'm your host, as usual, Lucas Riedel, and with me is my glove-making, camera-swinging, and always curious co-host, Carl Vanderboom. Carl, what's going on today?
I have been designing gloves. This is what I've been doing today. Deep in the rabbit hole.
What temperature are we talking on design? Is it real cold or just casual
I'm
cold?
gonna keep it all a secret. I can't tell you anything.
That's all right.
It's just some magic working away in the background.
And I'm going to be curious when they come out and love to test them out once we have the first samples. We have a person here who can test them all out, I guess. Today's guest has photographed across all 7 continents. I think it's 140 something countries. He's built a photography platform to uplift others and uses his camera not just to capture, but to connect, educate, and advocate. Colby Brown, welcome to Vallerret's Creative Outsiders. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here finally.
Yeah.
I felt like needed a round of applause on that intro just to like welcome you.
I appreciate it for sure. I appreciate it. I've been very fortunate in my career.
It is true. Like you're something almost 20 years in the business. Is that correct still?
Yeah. It's been coming up on 20 years now. Yeah, I can't believe it's actually been that long. It feels weird to date myself like that.
And it's crazy. It's like you gathered a pretty solid following. Colby, tell us one shoot out of the many you had that you will never forget.
Ooh, I'll never forget. Ooh, that's a good question. I don't think I've ever been asked that one. When I think these days, I focus so much on wildlife photography. I didn't always do wildlife photography. I've been doing it now mostly purely for about 6, 7 years now. Before I did travel and landscape, humanitarian, did some photojournalism early in my career. But with my current passion of wildlife and nature and conservancy, I'd probably say not a specific individual trip, but an experience. And it's an experience that I do fairly often, at least once or twice a year, is actually going to see the wild silverback gorillas in Uganda. To me, it's such a fantastic experience. And it's something that's much more intimate than you can get with most other wildlife experiences. Because if you go to Africa and you go to Kenya and the Masai Mara, which is fantastic, you're in a safari vehicle and there's this disconnect between you and the lions or the leopards or the cheetah or the gazelle or whatever you're looking at. With the silverbacks, which I typically go to see them in Uganda, as I mentioned, you can also see them in the Congo, technically in Rwanda. But in Uganda, the close proximity, the fact that you're on the ground, you have to kind of hike and trek to get to the troop that you've been assigned that has been habituated to a little bit of human contact, which you get about an hour a day for the permitted process. It's such a unique and special experience. There's so much that we share with the silverback gorillas, genetically, personality-wise, how they act, how they imitate. You can see the little ones, the little silverbacks, mimicking their father or their mother, which is just like our kids do. It's just very surreal. Every time I walk away from that experience, I have this giant, stupid smile on my face. And every experience is different, which is pretty fantastic, of course, like it is with all wildlife. But yeah, I'd say anytime I can get a chance to be with wild silverback gorillas, it's a good day for me.
Is it dangerous?
No, yes and no, right? So, of course, wild animals are wild, right? So there's, of course, a chance like a big male silverback. These guys are pure muscle. And if
Yeah,
they
because they're
wanted
huge. Yeah.
to, they could cause serious damage. But they're such gentle creatures for the most part. They're, compared to chimpanzees, for example, chimpanzees are much more human-like in terms of that potential for aggression. I also see chimpanzees, wild chimpanzees in Uganda and Rwanda, and they're fantastic as well. I love photographing them. I love seeing them. I love doing video on them. But when they get with another troop, gets close to them, it's war, and they'll not only kill each other, they'll also be cannibals and eat the vanquished foes. With gorillas, you don't have that. There is definitely a hierarchy that you get with the big male silverbacks, vying for being the alpha within a family, which typically most troops have just a single alpha silverback. And so there can be some infighting and there can be some brutality within that space. But in terms of actually being with them, they're very docile creatures. They're not meat eaters. I just don't see the aggression. So there's been times where I've been false charged by a big alpha male silverback gorilla because I'm a very tall individual. I'm 6'3". I weigh 210 pounds. And they're usually just trying to establish dominance. But I've never felt in that situation or any situation with the silverbacks where I've been okay, I'm at risk for bodily injury or harm. They're just fantastic.
Cool. Because I was thinking when you said at the start, there's a disconnect between, I get a safari in you and the lions. And I was thinking, you kind of want that disconnect a little bit because you don't really want to be intimate with a lion.
No, that's a good point. And it's a question I get a lot on social media, right? I do a lot of work with India, with tigers or lions in Africa or jaguars in South America. And people are always like, is that safe? And you're right. For those specific predators, for the most part, you want to have that disconnect. You want to have that safety bubble. You want them to look at the vehicle that you're in as a giant metal elephant. It's not something that's going to cause them harm. It may be annoying here or there if they get too close, but it's not a threat. Because not only does that stress out the animals, but also, of course, puts you into a different position. But what's happened is they've become so habituated to this experience of this metal thing and this shape and the sounds that come out of it, is that if you break that understanding, then things change. And a really quick example of that is I was photographing female and 2 lion cubs in South Africa just before COVID. And I was there by myself before I was teaching a workshop. So it's just me in a private vehicle. And I wanted to get a higher angle to get a better perspective of these 2 cubs that were playing and looking adorable. And so I talked to my ranger, a guy I've been known for years. I was like, hey man, can I stand up and get this different angle kind of on the, stand up on the Land Cruiser? And he's like, yeah, sure. Just make sure you don't have your head breach the top of the vehicle because that changes the shape. And I was like, oh, okay, sure. Not a problem. And so I'm doing it, and I'm, again, a big guy, wasn't really paying attention. And sure enough, my head eclipsed the top of the vehicle, and it changed the shape of the outline or the silhouette that she was seeing. And all of a sudden, she was 10 times more interested in what we were doing and why we were there. She started getting a lot closer, and I had to sit down really quickly. And so because I had broke that covenant, that understanding for that female lion, things changed. And you can see how that could, cause issues in other situations. But I'd say that when it comes to predators, the only predator that I know of that is a large cat, not the little ones, because they're generally not dangerous to us, but the large cats that you can actually get to and have a great on-foot experience with are the pumas in Patagonia and towards the Paine National Park. They have, again, been habituated to human contact, and they don't go after humans because there's so many guanacos out there. It's the cousins of the llamas out there. And you can actually go there in some of the private estancias, these private farmlands or ranch lands, and go and have these amazing experiences on foot. You'll take a 4x4 vehicle to a point, and then they're like, oh, there's a puma around the corner that's just made a kill, or one's resting over there. And then you can get out as a small group and work together. And there's rules and regulations, but it's the only one where you can actually go there on the ground and not feel threatened, which is pretty an amazing experience as well. But it's a little bit more unnerving, especially if it's your first time.
So to me, that sounds like those trips are, for you, are more about the experience than actually the image you bring home. Is that correct?
Yeah. I mean, a lot of that comes back to how I got into this career to begin with, which is I just fell into it. I don't have that nostalgic story where my father handed me a camera when I was 7 years old, and it's what I always wanted to do. I'm sure that's some photographer stories, but it's just not mine. I played sports throughout high school, hurt my back, gave up a scholarship before I went to college, went through school, just kind of went through the motions, and realized after I graduated from university that I just wanted something different. I was working at a hospital, a 9 to 5 in a suit and tie, and lasted a few months, and I couldn't cut it. It just wasn't for me. And so I decided or realized that I love traveling. I had been fortunate every once in a while to take a semester off and go traveling, and I fell in love with that idea. And so what happened to start my career is that I was like, okay, I want to go traveling. I'm going to quit my job, sell everything that I have, start traveling around. And I was like, maybe I should pick up a camera and I could take a few photos on the side. I was single. I was nomadic. I didn't have much debt at the time, so I had a little bit more freedom. This is back in the early mid 2000s. And it was that notion or that idea of travel experiences of being outside my comfort zone that really spoke to me. And so that is what launched the idea or the passion for getting out there and seeing more. And I just happened to have a camera, which ended up turning into a passion and a skill set and a career. But it was that love of travel, of being in foreign lands, of learning about new species, of learning about different belief systems, of feeling outside my comfort zone that was where I was most happy at that time in my life. Or before that, when I was going through the motions in college, I just always felt disconnected. I felt like I didn't belong. I went through I partied with friends and I went to school and I went through the motions, but it never really connected with me. And it wasn't until I found myself traveling again and as I went to Southeast Asia, I spent 4 years living over there and just was in places that no one spoke English and I had to figure out how to make it work. And to me, that was like awesome. It was so fun. So I think that idea of the experience being the most important part was not only my origin point for being or entering in the photography industry, but it's also how I approach photography. So if you look at my images and you look at the content I'm trying to create, I'm trying to convey some sort of emotionality or emotional reaction with what I'm experiencing and hopefully convey some of that to the viewer. And so they can feel a part of that moment compared to an alternative. If you look at like some people's Instagram feeds and like every one of their photos looks the same, like that's cool, that's for them, but that's not for me. I don't want to put my imprint on everything. I want to be able to share an experience and something unique and different with everyone else rather than just have everything through my own interpretation of it, if that makes any sense.
It does make sense. It seems like it's that those two ways you can go. It's like what's the same for me. I have been, getting an apprenticeship, working a real job for a while, and then picking up like a camera as a hobby, and then making those films from hanging out with friends, Carl included, and just figuring out that there's so much more in there, and then giving it a try. So that it has this like I would call it an intrinsic. Is that the right word in English? Intrinsic motivations. Like you wanna tell the story or you wanna experience something and capture it instead of just go somewhere and capture something. I guess that is also what you've been learning over the last 20 years. You have always been like, at least in my perspective, you have been always a driving force for you. Photography was the visual storytelling. You didn't want to just take that one photo and then have it as a photo, but you're thinking like in the long run, what does it tell you and how does it go?
Yeah, and how you can relate to it, right? Think about photography in 2025, right? Like how many billions of images are created every single day from people's cell phones and all sorts of other stuff. And those experiences are great, or those moments are fine. But how many times do we look back on our photos from our phone or casual stuff like that and like truly encapsulate an experience, right? I feel that there's that superficiality with a lot of photography, both in the casual, also in the professional space these days, where there's nice images, but it feels flat, not necessarily visually, but there's a lack of connection with that image, if that makes sense. And I find that if I approach photography for me through that idea of experience or experiential, focus or priority, that I can add a bit more depth to the image or to the experience. And I think there's a lot of value in that. I think most photographers, at least those of us that are doing this for a living, want to capture people's attention. And sometimes that causes issues or other problems. But in the positive side of things, like, I want to, if you're scrolling through Instagram or Threads or whatever program you're using, or you're walking by a gallery, what is it about an image that is going to cause you to stop scrolling and scroll backwards and go back to that image, or stop in your tracks and backtrack 5 feet and go walk into the gallery that you just saw? that to me, that special something that is sometimes hard to define is that extra something that makes an image special. And
Can you
yeah, go ahead.
sorry, yeah, I just want to get like try to get an example for that, because if you think of your favorite shot from a silverback gorilla
Sure.
experience,
Yeah.
what would you want the person who looks at it to feel if he looks at the shot?
I would want someone to feel happiness and connection, wonder, inspiration. I mean, obviously different images can convey different emotions, but like I have this photo that I took a couple years ago of this female silverback gorilla, and she had her back to me. And when I first come across the scene, she kind of made eye contact. And because we're so similar in terms of human beings to the silverbacks, I generally know that that means that specific silverback has some sort of interest. So I knew that she was going to turn around again. And so I had a 100 to 400 millimeter lens. I think I was shooting with a Sony A9 at the time. And I just kind of sat there frozen in the moment, just waiting for her to turn around and make that one connecting moment. As soon as she turned around, she has, a piece of tree branch or something in her mouth. She's chewing and she's turning back and looking directly at me. And we have this like 3-second, like intimate moment experience. And you're looking into her eyes and her soul, and she's looking into mine. And there's just this really beautiful synergy that I think is something that we all, again, strive for to get with any type of photography, let alone wildlife photography. And so when people see that, I want people to feel that connection. I want people to feel that they could be there, that they're part of that shared moment that is unique and different, a different species. That's something that feels maybe foreign, but also familiar. For that type of moment or those types of moments, that's what I'm going for. And so that's that extra depth, right? It's not just, here's a nice photo of a silverback. It's like, here's a moment and you can share this experience that I had and I was fortunate to have. You can have that too, even if you're just sitting at home, looking through your Instagram feed. That's kind of the depth that I was talking about.
Yeah, it sounds like you've crossed the boundary of going from a photographer to an artist. Now you're trying to get those emotions and get people really connecting with the image, as opposed to, we had this conversation not that long ago, so I just
Yeah,
brought
we
it back.
were kind of like building bridges from just creating or like documenting something, and then having an intent, like you just described it. You figured it out that she might be looking back, or probably is gonna looking back, and then being ready for that moment and getting it. And it's a rewarding feeling. Did you feel that in the moment, that you immediately get the idea that that's a great shot? Or
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think, you never know if it's going to work out, right? Like, like in the moment, like, for me, when I have those types of moments, like the hair on the back of my neck, like stand up and I'm like, oh, that was pretty special. But usually I'm not going to like sit there and go in and like look at the image really quick and make sure, like, I want to be present. I want to be there. I want to make that connection. I want to take the shot. I want to see what else happens. And then after the fact. So I had an inkling or idea that it was something special, but it wasn't something I was going to fixate on. I was there. I had another half an hour or 45 minutes with that particular troop of silverbacks for my habituation time. And I wanted to focus on what else I could potentially create or capture. And then once I got back from that experience and I was looking through my images, and then it was like, your mind blows and you're like, okay, that's the shot that I would really wanted to get. And I was able to pull it off. But I think you're right. I think that idea of intent is different. I give a talk, I've done a lot of talks at, Javits Center in New York for B&H and a lot of these other companies, Sony. And I always talk about that idea of how intent plays such an important role, because otherwise we're just taking snapshots, whether it's with your cell
Yeah.
phone or a big professional camera. Like if you're just taking a moment and you're freezing in time, that's great. That's fine. But that to me is superficial. I
So
want
what's your
more.
process then of sitting around with the gorillas? Like you said, you had half an hour, an hour. How much are you just sitting there in the moment versus like looking for shots, taking photos? Like how many photos do you even walk away with?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think it depends on what they're doing, right? You never know what the silverbacks are going to be doing, or if any wildlife is going to be doing. I'm generally not shooting at high frames per second because, again, they have more fluid, slower, intentional movements compared to a bird taking off or a cheetah in full run. So I'd probably say a couple hundred maybe at max. More so I'm thinking or I'm planning or I'm putting myself in a good position and being prepared for potential moments. And I think that is what you have to do with most wildlife photography, because you're not working with subjects that will work on command, right? So I'm always trying to think of light. I'm like, okay, the light is here and I got some great images, but it's backlit and I don't like it. So, can I slowly walk around and check with the rangers and the security and be like, can I go around this side? And then even if there's nothing over there, I'll wait there for the better light, knowing that hopefully they will then make the connection and come back to me. Or other times I see a moment unfolding and I'm like, okay, this is going to be fantastic. Whereas other times things are just happening spontaneously and you just have to be, you don't have the time to think too much about the intent. You just have to be prepared and hopefully be able to pull something out of it. So it's a little bit of a multifaceted approach. Ideally, I have more time where I can visualize what I'm trying to get and then be able to adapt on the spot to the changing environment. And that to me is usually where I get my best work, where I have a little bit more of a linear focus of the types of images I'm trying to get rather than the spaghetti test where you try to get everything, in which case you kind of half-ass do everything. And so
Yeah.
I don't really come away with a lot of stuff I'm very happy with, or not happy with, that are what I consider portfolio images. Like a portfolio image defines an artist to me. And if I can come away with one of those per trip, like that's fantastic. And I have a lot of other images that I'm happy with, but they're not necessarily that one shot like that Silverback shot that is just mind-blowing.
Because it's also got to be hard if you go in with like an intent, but these are creatures. They're not,
Sure.
they're going to do what they do.
Yep.
So then if you've got quite a very serious focus on the thing you want to get, they might not do that thing for
Sure.
you, right?
Sure. You can't go into, I don't think you should go into any genre of photography, but certainly wildlife, going for trophy hunting. And that's what I call it, where if you sit there and you have this one image in mind and you're just going to go laser focus on that because you miss everything else. But I think there is benefit or validity in going into a situation, whether it's landscape or wildlife or astro or whatever, with an idea of what you're hoping to do, because then you're slightly more prepared for whatever potential can come. And then, as I mentioned, you have to be adaptable. You have to sit there and say, okay, I planned for this, but the light's crap. What do I do now? Do I focus on detail shots? Do I completely try to change my angle? Do I just wait patiently for things to get better? There's all sorts of options that you potentially have, and you have to be able to read the situation, adapt on the fly, and go from there. So you're 100% correct, but I do think it has value, as I mentioned, to come in with an idea at least and adjust on the fly from there.
So if anyone doubts out there of you guys listening, that Colby is a visual storyteller. He just told you how to do it, basically. So if you missed it, skip back and listen to that again. It's great. No, it's such a great example of like an approach to the situation, trying to get that best possible outcome. And from that point, interesting to me is like you're self-taught photographer, so you haven't been on any kind of like photography school or something like that. On which way on that 20 years, or how long did it take to get to what you would now call your way of photography?
I mean, I'd say that I'm still learning. Early in my career, it was more the spaghetti test. And then I remember this one moment, like 2 or 3 years in, I was in Cambodia in Angkor Wat City, at the very top of the towers, this beautiful Hindu and Buddhist temple out there, for those that don't know. And they used to allow you to go to the very top. There's like, I think 7 different levels. You can go to the very top. I think it's roped off now because of over-tourism. But I was able to be up there and I saw this monk wearing white robes, which is rare, walking through these pillars early in the morning and the light was coming down. And I kind of saw where he was going. It was the first time I had ever seen a scene unfold before me, and in my head I was like, oh my goodness, this could be amazing. I'm gonna wait for what I'm envisioning to happen, and then I'm gonna try to capture it. And that's exactly what I did. He walked across, the light was hitting him beautifully, legs perfectly spread as he is his walk and his gait, and it all came together. And that to me was like, again, another one of those epiphany moments. But I feel that every point in my career where I have either shifted passions, like I moved, like I mentioned, from travel to landscape to humanitarian to astro, and then now I'm in wildlife. Every time I do that, I learn more things. I take something, I love the challenge of learning things, so I take something that I learned from a previous thing and then I apply it to wherever my passion or my interest are right then. As soon as I stop being passionate about something or start to lose a little bit of interest, I'll go do something else for a bit and then maybe I'll come back. And I think that overall helps me stay focused. It helps me stay passionate. It helps me enjoy that idea of challenge. and see where it takes me. And so each of those movements within those interest spaces have provided those moments, as you mentioned, of, okay, I'm kind of figuring it out. Okay, this makes sense. Like when I moved to wildlife photography, I had done it mostly based on opportunity because I was in places like Patagonia doing landscape, and I was like, oh, well, there's pumas here, or there's, I go to Bolivia and there's flamingos, or Alaska and there's bears, even though I'm there for aurora. And now I'm able to put my own take on it because I've applied what I've learned from the last 20 years, and then I and all of the trips and all the experiences, and then I try to do something different with it. And that's also what I enjoy doing, is not only learning but evolving and trying to improve that skill set of both storytelling and creating images that have more depth, both physically as well as figuratively, to be able to create something that is different and unique. And coming back to our last conversation, there's also a tie into that where when I go to a new location or a new species that I'm trying to photograph, I will look to see what other photographers have done in that space, not to copy them, but so that I know what's been done, so that I can think a little bit more proactively of like, okay, I've seen this done this million of times, so how can I do this different? A good example of this is I have this photo of a giraffe with an oxpecker flying at sunset, taken at 800 millimeters in Kenya on the Mara, and the sun is huge. It's the sun's setting, so the sun is huge. The giraffe is walking right through the ball. The oxpecker's flying with the wings up. And I had a vision for this image because I saw so many images of the sunsets in the Mara, but from a distance or from a wide angle. All of it was beautiful, but none of it spoke to me. And so I'd done my research, I got there, I had a plan and a vision, and then I started creating it. And now I'm seeing a lot of other people mimic that approach, and I love seeing that. I love being able to inspire other photographers to go and do it. And I probably wasn't the first, but I certainly feel that there's a lot more people doing that now that I've been able to share and create those images and push them out there. And that's awesome. It's awesome to be able to inspire others after being inspired by what other people had brought to the table as well.
But that also was a very clear picture of what you meant by going in with kind of like a vision and an intent. Which I think from when you're shooting snowboarding and stuff, that's generally, you kind of have to have that kind of vision anyway. Otherwise, you can't plan for anything to happen. But landscape, you can just go out and just time the light right and shoot kind of a lot of stuff. But yeah, that was a cool description of what you meant by going in with a clear intent.
Yeah, I agreed.
I would call it the reverse Instagram intent, kind of.
Yeah,
Because you look at what everyone's copying, because that is, I guess that's also a piece of what you meant before, is like this. They're all might be great photos, but they're so similar, and then it's like
they're not original,
or maybe 10,000 of the same, the mountain poking out in Iceland, or Northern Lights in Lofoten, and
wherever.
They're all great photos, but basically in a way that they're all the same, and then it feels pale, as you said.
Well, I think it's easy to copy, right? And there's nothing wrong with it. Again, we all mimic. We all see something we like and try to do something. But yeah, I think the trends in photography to me are boring. And I don't mean that to say it in a condescending way like I'm better or my approach is better, but it just doesn't speak to me. When I see the same types of images all the time, whether it's landscape or astro or wildlife, it's like, okay, those are nice images, but I've also seen 10,000 other amazing images of a cheetah. How can I get a different shot of a cheetah in full run with a blurry background, and how can I put those pieces together? And like, that's what I did this last trip to Kenya. Or how can I even approach landscape? Like, if you take 10 photographers and put them on tripods and you stand them out in the Northern Lights, like, you're going to get some variances, but it's not going to, everyone's going to be shooting at the same height and doing the same thing. So how do you break that mold? How do you look for different perspectives? How do you change your approach from what everyone else is doing? That to me is the challenge that speaks to my passion. I don't want to copy just because it's going to be popular on Instagram for a few months and then people are going to get bored and go on to something else. I want something that's different and something that's for me, and I want to shoot for myself and my interests. And I've just been fortunate in my career that those interests have also aligned in a way that has helped not only me grow social media, but also to have a very lucrative career at the same time, which isn't always the case, and it's harder to do now than when I first started, but that's my preference.
I guess it has had a pretty solid impact on your career, being able to, adapt all the time and change. And, also, I think it also takes a little bit of courage, because you're really good in landscape photography and you're starting to make a career out of it. It really takes like a leap of faith to just say like, I try something else. Let's do wildlife now.
Sure.
because you have the following that probably follows you for the landscape they like, where you do it. Would you encourage everyone who has this like a little bit of a dry streak on your creativity to just go and see to find another direction in photography and try it?
If you're finding yourself hitting a wall creatively, it's time to change things up. Now, you don't have to make a drastic change, but definitely make some shifts. And I think that a lot of the human species, and I don't know if it's necessarily endemic, more so, it seems to be more so to Western culture rather than to people in developing countries, because they have more of a thirst and a hunger to try to make things work. But there's this sense of fear with failure, right? Like, especially here in the States. I don't know, how much it is, over in Norway and Europe as much, but in the States, it's like this idea of failure is such like a 4-letter word. Like, people are afraid of it. So would they rather not try rather than fail? And I've never had that genetic code in me. It's never been like, okay, what if I try this and I fail? Like, in my head, I'm like, if I fail, I'm going to learn from it and I'm going to try something else. And when I think about any of the most successful, not only artists, but also entrepreneurs or even big companies, like, do you think like Jeff Bezos, who's not my favorite person in the world, but like, do you think he came up with the idea of Amazon just willy-nilly and like didn't have 1,000 other really crappy ideas and then finally found this one amazing success? The same thing happens from a creative standpoint. Like, you have to be willing to fail, to challenge and push yourself, to learn new things. And the best time to do it, at least for me, has been historically when I've been losing interest in what I've been doing. Because
Mm.
otherwise, I mean, let's be honest, like, I'm a photographer, I do some film work, I do social media campaigns, I'm an educator. I don't cure cancer. I'm not necessarily saving humanity here. I want to be real with why I'm doing what I'm doing. And art has value and has something to add to someone's experience. But I also don't want to have so much ego into it that I feel that, either I can't fail or I shouldn't fail or I should worry about what other people think. Like, I just want to create art for me and then share those types of experiences with other people in a positive way, with so much negativity and other stuff that are going around right now. So yeah, I love failure because it means that I have a learning lesson and I can challenge myself to figure out how to make or find success out of it, whatever that may mean to an individual.
That's perfect for my next question, because on your website and following your channels and then talking to you, it makes it feel like it was also easy. But like, I think, how often, or like, was there a moment in those 20 years where you said, fuck, that's not
Yep.
gonna work, or
Yeah.
that hasn't been good? And how did that feel, and how did you keep going?
Yeah, no, there's been a number of times. I mean, I've made a ton of mistakes. I mean, again, I started my first company back in 2004, 2005. And, back then we didn't have the photography community, or at least it wasn't as known, it wasn't as diverse, it wasn't as numerous as it is today. So there wasn't as many opportunities to learn from other people. It was more of a boys club, and all those same people got all the jobs with Nat Geo, and there wasn't a lot left for a lot of other people. So for me, the mistakes I look back on and I have regrets, like whether I said something to a company or I approached a project a certain way, was something that I found very beneficial, even if it was either embarrassing at the moment or that I had to learn from. Those experiences are not always easy. And even nowadays, looking back, I sometimes cringe at some of the choices I made early in my career or what I thought was a good idea.
Can we have one
Um,
example?
yeah, one example, a great one would be, so my first job working for National Geographic, I got hired by National Geographic 4 years, 3.5 years after picking up my first camera, which is pretty amazing, right? I ended up getting hired initially for their student expedition program in South America. And I go down there I was in Ecuador in the Galapagos setting up, I was helping them build out their expedition program series that they have. And I go there to scout and make sure that everything's dialed in and lined up. And like 2 days into it, I get my camera bag stolen and like nearly all of my gear. And I had to make that phone call to be like, so when the next people come down, can they bring a bunch more gear? It was the most embarrassing call I've ever had to make in my life and in my career. And there's nothing that you can do. There's no recourse that you can solve the problem without both the embarrassment and the learning lesson and the other pieces. But looking
So was
back
it
on
your
it,
fault? Like,
what?
did you learn from it, or
Oh,
did it just
100%.
like,
Yeah, it was too two individuals that definitely spotted me when I was walking through Quito, the capital of Ecuador. I had stopped to photograph this one woman. I had put a bag next to my leg. As I was photographing her, I was on some steps, and one of the guys came from the right, and he was jingling some keys, and he was saying, llaves, llaves, which is keys. And I was like, what are you talking about? So I leaned forward because he kind of was like holding them back. And as I leaned forward, the guy was behind me and grabbed the bag. And before, 10 seconds later, when I realized that they were gone in a crowd. And so since that, I've never had anything stolen for sure.
That would have been my question. Like, you learned the lesson. Did ever anything get stolen again? But the answer is no.
The answer is no. No, not from that moment.
Because Lucas got, a couple of years ago, got all his photography gear stolen out of his van in Italy. And I'm like, is it like, what are you going to do if you've got your gear in your van and you can't take it all with you all the time? Like, you have to.
It's tough.
What did you learn from that, Lucas? How do you not get your gear stolen?
I have it, for looking backwards in retrospective, it was exactly the same. It's like, they definitely were like following or like figuring out that there is the gear in the car, and they'd just been waiting for the right moment, smashing the window, opening the door, taking everything out.
I think there's a lot of lessons in all this stuff. Like for me, it was, obviously either keep things on me, change the type of backs that I use so that they're only back opening, for me to be able to access them when I'm in a, city area or I'm in transit, not to, trust my instincts when things feel off, but also at the end of the day, have insurance, have your things protected. And I hope whoever took those, that gear and stole it and sold it, I hope they needed it. I hope they fed their families. I mean, you can be embarrassed and have your ego hurt in the moment when those things happen, and it sucks, assuming you have done the precautions of having things covered and whatnot, so you're not at a big loss personally. And assuming I have that together, like to me, it's a crappy situation and it's a lesson I want to learn, but I also don't want to wish like too much ill will, right? You know what I mean? Like, people are doing what they can to survive. Life is hard. Things are weird. What would I do in a situation if my family was starving and I had to provide for them? Would I make a call like that? I hope I wouldn't, but who knows? And so I try to have a sense of humanity when stuff like that happens. But obviously, if you lost all of your stuff and you don't have insurance, and you made that mistake as well, so it's kind of compounded, then it's a little bit of a different story because it's harder to recover from that. But if a company is going to pay for your stuff and you're going to get it back and you maybe lost a day's worth of images, it's not the end of the world. You're going to survive, and hopefully that money goes to someone that needs it.
So this is the radical advice from our podcast for you guys out there. Have your stuff insured. And I agree. I got the money back from all the gear.
Makes a big difference.
I would also shout out to all the thieves for whatever reason you do it. If you find full films in the bag, just drop them next to the car or the person you steal it, because that might be sentimental value.
100%.
You can take all the gear, but just leave us the SD card or
leave us our photos.
Because that was, I had
you can't replace the images.
2 rolls of film shot with the family and my first kid.
Oh,
and
that's
they
hard.
were gone.
Yep.
And for the fact that I have been taking the old analog film camera, I didn't take too many photos with the digital camera, which were gone, by the way, as well. So that is the only thing I learned my lesson from, like not leaving the car or like the gear in the car and stuff. But then that's the only emotional thing I had. I would pay every cent to get those back.
100%.
I have actually been checking around the area. I've been checking all the trash cans and was hoping that they might have been, checking.
I'm going to put you under the bus a little bit there,
I
Lucas.
couldn't find, but so yeah, that's.
You were very amateur and not backing up your SD cards before you went away.
I was, in my defense, it was not a job, so it was private photos.
Yeah,
and then
that's true.
But still lesson learned.
They can sit on the camera for a while.
Back up my private shots more often nowadays as well, especially when I'm traveling.
Well, lessons are good to learn. They're not always easy. They're sometimes painful and they hurt the ego oftentimes, but they're always good lessons.
So from all your experience, and what did actually drive you into becoming such an educator and teaching other people and sharing your experiences?
I think for certain individuals, myself included, I think there's a bit of a dopamine hit when I see an individual struggle with something, and then I can convey something that allows it to click and that light bulb moment to go off. It's addictive. I love the idea of not only providing experiences for people to learn. I do some stuff online, but most of the stuff is all in field. So I love to go to places like Uganda or Kenya or India or Antarctica or Canada or wherever, and have people on this crazy adventure that happens to have a photography focus, and share that experience, but at the same time for them to kind of get over those obstacles and those challenges, technical, creative, whatever it is, in field, post processing, whatnot, and for them to see that. And that, I had some inkling of that early on in my life. I spent time coaching some youth when I was in high school and college, after I hurt my back. I lost my scholarship, as I mentioned. And so I knew that I enjoyed that, but I did that from a sports standpoint, which I think is where my love of challenges come from. But I had never done it creatively because I never knew that I was a creative individual. I took a woodshop class in middle school and a photography black and white film class, I think, when I was in 7th grade. I did a painting class at one time in high school, but it was just like things I had to do for electives. And it wasn't until I became a photographer, enjoyed or had the passion for creative thinking and sharing stories and experiences, and then to be able to try to elegantly and efficiently convey to some other individual how to do those things, and for them to make sense out of it, and then for them to then put those pieces together and create something of their own. I think to me is one of the most beautiful things you can do in art. I love the fact that I can share that with other individuals. But it came through that long process, or years of doing other things and dabbling, and then it kind of came together. And after that time working with National Geographic, I realized that I had a love of doing more of that, but I wanted to do it for my own company. And there's a lot of choices that either Nat Geo or other companies would make that I'm like, I don't think that's a good choice. I'd rather do it this way. And of course, I didn't have any say or power to change it. And so I was like, you know what? I'm going to start doing these myself. And so that's what I did. And it's been pretty fantastic since. We do, it depends on the year, but we do 14 to 20 workshops a year. I have a few contractors, friends, colleagues, other professional educators that teach with me, and we teach all over the globe now. And it's pretty fantastic. It's awesome to be able to share that with other people.
So you just solely working for your own company, or do you still do any work for Nat Geo?
No, I don't work for anyone else. I mean, I just did a video series for Sony, who I'm an ambassador with, teaching people kind of the basics of wildlife photography. I've done some big, video projects for B&H and stuff like that, but no, I don't. I gave up the idea of building someone else's brand long ago, and I prefer to work for myself. So
Nice.
I'd probably say 12, 15 years now. Been just focusing on my own workshops, tours, things like that from an educational standpoint.
That's it's a pretty solid portfolio for sure. But with all that, I've just had this time frame in my head before 20 years ago. There was no iPhone. There was what was 2000? Was the camera to go there like a 5D? Was that even there?
No, it wasn't. My
just came out.
My first digital camera that I actually got, that I didn't buy, it was a gift, was a Kodak 6490 4.1 megapixel bridge camera. I think I got in 2003. But then my first actual camera that I used on that initial, traveling trip to Southeast Asia was a Canon XTI, which was it was the generation, I think, just after the Canon Rebel. So it was right when these digital cameras were starting to become a little bit more affordable, but that was the start. But you're right, there was no cell phones.
That is, yeah. It just came to me that it feels like, because you're saying that 20 years doesn't really feel so long.
Technologically, it's ancient.
Yeah, you think in like video and image taking, it's centuries. Like it's a long time.
Ago. It was much harder to travel back then. I had to carry like big Lonely Planet books to like understand where to go and do things. You couldn't research stuff very easily. Couldn't call my parents and let them know I was alive. Like, traveling around Southeast Asia by myself for a couple of years. Like it was interesting times.
When you think about it in terms of the things you used to have with you, then it starts to make sense. Like the Lonely Planet travel books you mentioned, and now and just like when I was at university, so it was about the same time you were doing that stuff. Mid 2000s, I had this massive book in my car just to get around the city. Like there was just maps and maps and maps. And now you just pull up your phone. Like
you don't think about it.
It's funny
anymore.
It's funny when you think of those like little things you used to have to get around life, and now you just have it in your pocket.
Now we take it all for granted for sure.
Yeah.
So I got two more short things. So do you have a specific like a ritual or something before you go on a big shoot to get in the right mindset, or anything that is out of the ordinary?
Nothing out of the ordinary. I have a 14-year-old son and my wife here. I live in East Coast, in Pennsylvania. And, you know, now in my career, I always have trepidation before I leave on a trip. I can be excited, but I don't want to leave my family, right? Like when I was young and single, nomadic, I was like, let's go everywhere and be gone all the time. And now I want to spend more time at home. So, I think my ritual nowadays is like start packing my stuff, preparing for the trip, putting all the pieces together. And then like the 48 hours before I leave, I'm like, don't want to go because I'm missing them, or I know I'm going to miss them. And I'm like, I get like a knot in my stomach. And then as soon as I get to the airport, it like switches. And then all of a sudden I'm in like photography mode. And I'm like, okay, logistic, what do I need to, what needs to be handled, or what do I need to do? Or I just go into that travel space. And then I'm good. And I'm good once I'm there. As soon as I get to the airport, I'm good. But it's like the transit into the airport, being here at home, packing my stuff. I'm always like, oh, I'm going to miss you. Tell my wife I miss her. And my son is sad that I'm leaving. And so yeah, I'd say that's probably my only ritual, is like a little bit of guilt for leaving. And then as soon as I'm in the moment, or as soon as I'm in transit to head to the experience I'm about to have, then I'm like, my brain turns, switches around, and all of a sudden I'm like, okay, now I'm excited. Camera battery's good. Let's go put plans together. Let's put all the pieces and let's go have some fun.
I guess we both can feel that. It's like we have been nomadic and having all those adventures, and now we both have kids too.
It's hard.
It is a hard challenge, like to get over what I call dad guilt, to get over that and get your mindset into the shoot or the trip, whatever you have in front of you. That is the hardest part.
It's hard.
It's so good to hear it from a person like you with the more experience.
It's never easy.
Yeah, it's not easy. That's good. And with all the things you've done over the time, is there an image or an experience that you have not made yet, but you can already kind of see or feel it?
Yeah. I mean, when I think about my own bucket list experiences that I want to both have from an experience wise and also photographically, compared to when I first started out, I have like the same generic list that a lot of people do. I want to go to places like Patagonia or go visit Africa or whatnot. And like, your list is extensive, but not that depth, it doesn't have as much depth. Nowadays, my list is exponentially longer, even though I travel for 6-7 months out of the year, and I've been doing this for 20 years, and I go to all these amazing places and have these amazing experiences. But it's so much more specific now. And now it's like, I really want to go to this part of Madagascar to photograph this very specific kind of, satanic leaf gecko, or I want to go to Borneo, and I have this vision for this very specific kind of shot with this male orangutan. So I have a lot. I still have a lot of experiences that might be adjacent to experiences I've already had that I want to have. I want to create something that's different that I haven't fully put together. But every year I try to knock 2 or 3 of those off. Like when I look at my calendar, I always try to have space between projects or tours where if an opportunity presents itself, I can then look at my list, which I have a list, like I have a Google Keep thing that I every time I see something that inspires me, I share a link and I put it down there. And I look at the list. I'm like, okay, what can I fit in here based on where I'm going and what I'm doing already? So I try to knock some of those off. But yeah, I mean, trying to think of big specifics, like I'll be back in Patagonia a couple times this year for pumas. We talked about pumas. I have a couple of shots that I really want to get with the Los Torres Towers behind some of the pumas as they're on, one of the ledges. Like I've been going to Brazil to photograph jaguars for 10 years now. And there's this very specific spot or shot that I want to get of a jaguar leaping off of a tree to hunt for caiman in the water. I almost got it this year. I was just, a minute and a half late to get to a spot for this one particular jaguar that is known to do this jumping, leaping shot, things like that.
So they jump into the water like a caiman's like a crocodile, right?
Yeah. Caiman's like a South American crocodile, and jaguars are the only big cats that hunt in the water. Nearly all the other cats hate water. The tigers will go in for cooling themselves down because it's so hot in places like India, but jaguars hunt in the water. So they're beefier kitties, and each different jaguar has different approaches to how they do it. Some of them will hunt from the ground. A few of them have learned to hunt in the water, which is crazy to me. And then a few of them do these like running leaps and jumps off the sides of the Cuiabá River out there in the Porto Joffre and Mato Grosso area of Brazil. And a handful of them will climb the trees that are on the edges of the banks and will get out to a branch overlooking the water and literally do like this belly flop where they just wait for a caiman to cross underneath them, and they're just like, all right, it's time, and they jump down.
What?
And so I like I said, this year I was there, but my boat got stuck behind a few other boats at this particular location, and I heard it, and then I saw people on social media share it, but only thing I saw was the butt of the cat as it jumped off and landed, in a place I couldn't see. And I was like,
How
oh,
did
man.
that feel?
Invigorating. I mean, it was exciting. I don't want to necessarily say disappointing. Of course, maybe there's some disappointment in there. Like, of course, you want to have the experience, you want to have the shot, you want to have content out of it. But I think just being there, I mean, I've learned over my career to not take for granted how lucky I am to do what I do, to be in the places I get to be every single year, to get paid to do what I do. And so even when I have failure, even when things don't come together, I always try to appreciate those moments. So in that moment, yeah, I might have been like, oh, I wish we got there. But immediately I was like, just ecstatic for everyone else that got to see it and have that experience. I had this this one experience up in Canada. I was going up to Canada for my first time ever. It was 2019, to go photograph polar bears. And it's expensive to go photograph them. Like they're up in Hudson Bay, Manitoba, and they wait there. They come in early November to wait along the shore for the ice to freeze, for the harp seals to then be able to chase the harp seals and go hunt and survive and live and whatnot. And this particular year, the first year I go up there, I spent $10,000 or $15,000, whatever it was, to put all this together, to go and scout, put things together, and eventually maybe run a tour. And I go up there and a polar vortex comes through like 2 days before we go up there. For those that don't know, a polar vortex pulls a lot of this cold air from the very far North Arctic and brings it down for this like extreme cold spell. And what happened is that like the second day I got up there, the temperature dropped from like 0 degrees Celsius to negative 60 degrees Celsius. And what happened in that moment is that, of course, the ice froze. And so the polar bears took off because they're going to go hunt. They're like, this is great. It's 2 weeks earlier than we normally are. We're going to go hunt for harp seals. We're going to survive. It's going to be a good season for them. And it was for them. But I was up there for 10 days spending all this money and, being out in these massive tundra buggies where to stay warm and going and looking for polar bears to photograph and other wildlife. And it was so cold and the weather was so bad that there was like almost no photographic opportunities. And so in the moment, you're like, oh my goodness, I just wasted all this money and why did I make this choice and whatnot. But then again, it was like, man, I'm up here, close to the Arctic Circle. Like it's just amazing to be out here and be in these places. So I always, whenever possible, try to be as thankful as I can to be in these places, to have the experiences that we talked about, because the experience is the focus. It's not the photography. Photography is important, but it's second fiddle to being able to have these unique moments that 99% of the rest of the planet aren't going to be able to have. And then hopefully, if things line up, to be able to capture something that allows those other 99% of individuals of the population on this planet to share just a glimmer of what that was like, so that hopefully it changes their day for the good. And hopefully they can have a bit more experience.
I think that's what also makes getting those shots. Like when you finally get that shot, it's going to feel so good because it's you've missed it a couple of times.
Sure.
It's like it can't always all be peaches.
No. I'd say it almost
ice cream or
it almost never
you say
is.
that.
You have to work
Like,
for it. And you're right. You have to work for it to make it worthwhile.
Yeah, and you need the bad times or the not great times to make the good times better.
I have on my arm here, this is the Buddhist prayer. So this is Om Mani Padme Hum. And the direct translation is Hail the Jewel of the Lotus. And the idea is that through life, one finds wisdom and peace. And it's just a good constant reminder that it's the journey that's important. It's the ups and the downs where you learn and you can find happiness. You can find purpose. You can find validity in our experiences in the short time that we have on this planet. So, coming back full circle to everything we've talked about, like I love the challenges. I love, the great moments and the down moments and when things don't work out, because I always want to try to improve myself. I always want to try to find ways to make a moment better and have a good positive experience. And that idea, that thought process throughout that particular aspect of Buddhism, of the law of opposites, the fact that a table isn't a table if it wasn't for the negative space around it. Love wouldn't be love if it wasn't for hate. There's all sorts of understanding of why things work. And even though I'm not religious, that just makes sense to me. So
Yeah.
the good with the bad, the success with the failure, it's all part of the same experience.
Wow, that's
Wise.
a great end.
I've written 2 questions down in
All
our
right.
conversation.
Is this
I
like
like
a
that.
lightning round where I'm super quick?
It's like a lightning
Yeah,
round.
correct.
These are just things that you've talked about for me, and I want to know answers to. What sport did you have at university that you
So
you got the scholarship for?
I had a football scholarship, and when
scholarship.
I fractured my 5th lumbar, so the very bottom vertebrae, I fractured in off season because of improper lifting with bad football coaches at the time, American football, and that's ended up derailing the career for that. I also played baseball and did some track at the time as well, but
All right.
football was the main at the time.
How many days away from home in a year are you?
I don't know the actual day count, but I would say usually it's 6 to 7 months, but I try to spread it out. I try to do a project, a couple weeks at home, project, a couple weeks at home. So it depends. Sometimes projects go to projects, and then I'm gone
Yeah.
for like 2 months, and I hate that. If I can avoid it, I try to do
Yeah,
that.
that's
But
a long time.
it's a long time for sure.
Okay, so
Yeah,
you're kind of away doing your stuff half of the year, and then home half the year. Like,
yeah.
not in full
I've been
blocks,
getting
but
better about being more strategic about planning trips and tours and experiences, and not piggybacking off of too much stuff. Like early in my career was like, okay, if I do this and then this and then this on top of this trip, I could make more money. I can do this. But then I'm like, now that I'm older and I've been doing this for a long time, I'm like, but then I'm away for, 38 days, and that's no fun for my family. It's no fun for me. And so I try to, I'd say every year I get better about having the same amount of experiences, but being gone less.
yeah, cool.
And I think that's been helpful.
Can we
I
turn
think
that
it's-
around? Like, what was the longest you've been not home?
I think the longest was like 55 days or something like that, almost 60 days. To me, the catalyst was COVID. Like, the world shut down, obviously travel stopped, and it was hard financially. But to me, it was the silver lining was that, like me and my wife have been married now for 16 years. My son is 14. And COVID from March 12th of 2020 until May, it was like 28th of 2021, was the longest consecutive time that I had been home since me and my wife were married. It was the longest consecutive time I'd been home since my son was born. And leading up to that, I was also getting burned out. I had been traveling too much. I'd been pushing both ends of the candle for too long. And so by the time COVID hit, I was like creatively fried. And so what happened from that day that the world shut down, or US shut its borders, is that I went on like a creative sabbatical. That year, I don't think I picked up my camera once. And I just like enjoyed being at home. And I did a lot of mental health, work through. I took care of my body better, like all sorts of things that I had neglected, where I had priorities in the wrong way, in the wrong spaces. And so to me, COVID helped reshape all of that. And since COVID came back, there's a little bit of a push after COVID stopped, or at least was easier to travel because so many people wanted to travel. So I had a bit of a flood. But since then, 2022, 2023, every year has been like, okay, let's dial it back, or let's be like, okay, we're going to very specifically do this, and then I'm going to come home for a few weeks and I'm going to do this. So there's more reprieve. There's more mental breaks and creative breaks and time with the family, because that's what keeps my sanity these days. And I didn't have that before.
Nice.
Not all things COVID are bad.
No, for sure.
That's
It
good
was
to
it was
hear.
horrible for a lot of people, but for me, I was fortunate. And I live out in the woods here in Eastern Pennsylvania, so to be honest, like I didn't see much of things. I was just here on my property, like hanging out for a year. It was actually quite fantastic, personally. Financially, not so great, but money is money. It comes
Everything
back.
comes with
It
like a
comes-
downside somewhere.
Yep, for sure.
Okay,
All right.
I got two more. It's like, would you rather travel to shoot or travel to feel?
I'd rather travel to feel, for sure. Really quickly, like the best way I can encapsulate the idea of why I find feeling and experiences to be much more powerful. In my house right now, if I were to take you on a tour, you would see maybe 2 of my images. Everything else is artwork from places I've been. I have a wall of masks from all over the world. I have sculptures. I have musical instruments. Like, to me, photography is a creative passion and something I love, but it's not a driving force. The driving force is that those experiences, is appreciating other artistic work, of feeling creative, but it's not that idea of trophy hunting. I'd rather go have an amazing experience, and if I can happen to bring my camera to document it, I'd rather do that. I feel that the photography industry is past the point where we are gonna ever have another, Annie Leibovitz or Ansel Adams. Like, 20 years from now, probably no one, or 30 years from now, no one's gonna know who I am, or 50 years, or whatever it is. And I think too many choices people make these days are based on ego, in terms of trying to be remembered for creating work and whatnot, rather than having the experiences. And the longer I've done this, when I'm in the field, the less I have my camera in my hands, the more I appreciate, again, being in the moment, getting some shots, putting the camera down, and then just being like, oh my God, there's a jaguar right there. Or look at this amazing sunset in Africa, or look at this beautiful snake in Saudi Arabia. Like, whatever it is, I just want to feel. At the end of the day, I don't think I'm going to look back on my deathbed and be like, God, that image was amazing. I don't think that happens. I
Yeah.
think it's not real. But to me, experiences are what it's about.
Nice. That was awesome.
That was pretty brilliant. Colby,
You're-
thanks.
Wise words, Colby.
I appreciate it. You
Thanks
guys
for
were
sharing.
fantastic hosts. This was actually fun. You guys asked some really great questions that I don't always get asked on this type of stuff, and I always appreciate that. So thank you guys.
Then that makes us more than happy to get our idea of the whole thing approved by someone like you. So
Sure.
yeah, thanks for sharing, not just
course.
where you've been, but also why that all matters, I'd say. We love to see your photography, both as an art, and now we even more understand the impact. Yeah. For all you guys out there, if you want to check out Colby's work, if you haven't before, you can find all the links in the show notes. If you guys listening on a podcast service, make sure there is a YouTube version as well. We try to put some cool images and some videos from Colby's adventures on top of that. If you're watching on YouTube, leave us some comments, whatever we can do better. Hit the subscribe button, follow us, and we see you guys next time. Thank you, Colby. It was a great chat.
Thanks, Colby.
Truly my
Appreciate it.
pleasure.
And it's cool stories.
Thank you. Thank you, guys.